After an accident with my son, I began to suspect my wife of infidelity, and now I found out that she was pregnant from our family doctor. It all began one sunny afternoon when my 7-year-old son, Ethan, who's in the second grade, was supposed to be dropped off after school by a neighbor's dad who usually picks him up. But that day, instead of pulling into our driveway, the dad stopped on the opposite side of the street and let Ethan out. Eager to see me, Ethan dashed across without checking for cars, completely forgetting the safety rules we had drilled into him. I immediately called for help. The ambulance and police arrived shortly after. My wife, Ashley, who I've been married to for 8 years, was on her usual shift at the hospital. At the hospital where Ashley worked, the rules required all staff to store their cell phones in lockers during work hours. I called the hospital as I headed to the emergency room to inform her about the accident. That's when I found out that due to an unexpected lull at the hospital, all full-time staff had been asked to take some of their accumulated leave time to avoid furloughs. Ashley had decided to use her time off that day, but she left for work in her scrubs anyway, not planning to be off. Normally, she'd discuss any planned time off with me first. I couldn't help but wonder if she had taken up extra work somewhere else to help out someone in need. All I knew for certain was that the receptionist at the hospital had lied to me. It was a small detail, but it troubled me. I tried calling Ashley's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail, which was unusual because she would normally answer if she wasn't working. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I left her a detailed message explaining the situation. I had completed all the paperwork for our son, Evan, but there was still no word from Ashley. The emergency doctor ordered x-rays and a CT scan for Evan because he wasn't waking up and they were concerned he might have a serious brain injury. I was starting to panic. Finally, about 2 hours after her shift would have ended, Ashley showed up. I noticed she had a fresh, soapy scent, the kind she usually had after a morning shower. Instantly, I sensed something was off, though I couldn't identify exactly what it was. Just a small detail, but the pieces were beginning to add up. I now knew something was amiss, but I couldn't figure out what it was. When I asked Ashley if the receptionist had given her my message, she said she got it later, explaining that she was busy with a patient transfer. She mentioned she was at Mercy General while I was at St. Mary's. I suspected she was lying, but I didn't push it. This wasn't the time or place. 2 different women had lied to me that day, and I knew I needed to find out why. What began as a normal day had turned into a series of lies and inconsistencies between us. The only thing I knew for sure was that Ashley wasn't acting like herself. After Evan started waking up from the tests, the doctors decided to keep him overnight for observation because he had been unconscious for so long. Around midnight, after he fell asleep, Ashley and I headed home, stopping at a Wendy's drive-thru for dinner. After eating and having a soda, we went to bed. The next day, Evan was cleared to come home. We were fortunate that there were no serious injuries. When we arrived at the hospital, our family doctor, Dr. Matthew Clark, was there examining Evan. I was impressed by how seriously he took his job. Before we left, he told us to schedule a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks. He explained that sometimes issues related to head injuries might surface later and emphasized the importance of being cautious, especially with young children. Once we were back home and settled in, I asked Ashley again about her day on Friday. Her answer didn't satisfy me. Normally, she'd share if anything interesting had happened at work or if they had a new patient admitted. These little pieces of everyday communication were missing. It was a small thing, but these details were starting to form a troubling pattern. Whatever Ashley had been up to on Friday, it was clear she didn't want me to know. I began to wonder why. I started thinking back over the past few weeks to see if I had done something to upset her. Ashley had a tendency to hold grudges if she felt wronged, even for a long time. Ashley and I were high school sweethearts. From the moment I first met her during junior year, I never looked at anyone else. Although we broke up a few times, we always found our way back to each other. Ashley had a habit of diving into new interests or relationships that often led to our breakups. I thought it was just part of growing up and assumed it was a phase she would outgrow. Each breakup was because she had developed an interest in someone or something new. I was on the varsity basketball team at Lincoln High, and she was a cheerleader. We were both popular, and everyone thought we were meant to be together, but we ended things our senior year because I didn't see a future for us after high school. I joined the police academy and worked my way up, while she pursued her degree in nursing, eventually becoming a registered nurse. I reconnected with Ashley after an injury on the job. 6 months later, we were married. Our son was 3 years old when Ashley became a registered nurse. Ashley had long, wavy brown hair, green eyes, and a fit figure. She was well-liked for her caring personality. What puzzled me was that in all our years of marriage, we never had any serious conflicts or problems. Recently, we had even been discussing having another child. That Sunday, we were invited to a neighborhood cookout at a friend's backyard. We got ready, each of us wearing our swimsuits under our clothes. On the way, I stopped at the grocery store to pick up the food we were supposed to bring. Enough hot dogs and buns for about 18 people. These hot dogs were special. I always boiled them before grilling because they retained their moisture and had a savory, satisfying flavor. I discovered this cooking method by accident, and now these were the only ones I liked. I called them smokers because of their distinct flavor. It turned out that my preparation method made them a hit, and we always ended up with more meat than bread. That Sunday, no one noticed me in the kitchen carefully boiling the hot dogs until they plumped up, then drying them off before grilling. Meanwhile, Ashley was outside chatting with our host, Lauren, who was head of the HR department where they both worked. They were watching our son and Lauren's daughter playing with a few other kids by the pool. I wasn't paying much attention to their conversation until the end, when I overheard something that shook me to my core, revealing what was really going on. Dr. Matthew Clark, the well-respected doctor who used to visit the hospital every Friday afternoon to check on his patients, only comes by now when you're on duty. It's making some of us wonder if there's something more between you two. Is there something I should know? No, not really, Ashley replied, looking flushed and clearly avoiding the topic. Her expression usually meant she was caught doing something she didn't want to explain. Now, I knew that two people's Friday routines had suddenly changed. Ashley had a good reason to keep whatever she was hiding a secret, which wasn't like her. We're just professional colleagues, Ashley tried to clarify, but it wasn't convincing. He appreciates the detailed reports I send him about his patients' behaviors. It helps him manage their treatment plans. That's not what people are saying in the halls, Lauren retorted. Whatever is going on, it better stay strictly professional at work. Otherwise, these rumors will only get worse. I'll talk to him about it next time I see him. I have another meeting with him next week, Ashley said. I should go check on Ethan, Ashley added as she walked away to check on our son in the pool. I muttered under my breath. She's lying. She doesn't have a meeting with the doctor next week. Lauren heard me and turned, seeing the shock on my face. Her expression became serious as she realized, just like I did, that something was definitely going on that I hadn't known about until today. You heard us, didn't you, Jason? Lauren said. I simply nodded. You think there's something going on between them, don't you? Over the past few weeks, I've noticed some inconsistencies. Now, with what I just overheard, it's painting a very different picture. Her expression showed that she's hiding something she doesn't want anyone to know about. It's making me reconsider everything. Can you tell me how long Ashley has been taking every other Friday off? For the last 2 months, Lauren answered. She proposed the new schedule, saying she works a lot of extra hours and that most of her overtime pay goes towards taxes. Taking the day off helps reduce her hours, and she saves her accumulated leave for family matters. We in HR liked it because it saves the company money and gives part-time employees more hours. One more question. How close is Ashley to the receptionist who answers the phone? I asked. They're best friends. Why? Lauren replied. When I called about Ethan's accident on Friday, the receptionist told me Ashley was taking accumulated leave because it was slow and management had asked all full-timers to do so to avoid cutting part-time staff. You were lied to. We're operating at full capacity. There's no need for cuts. What are you going to do? Lauren asked, pouring me a strong drink. Ashley is definitely hiding something, and her best friend seems to be helping her, apparently for a while. I hope what I suspect isn't true, I said. Dr. Clark is our family doctor. If my gut feeling is right, I'll ruin his career, divorce my wife, and seek sole custody of our son. Well, according to the rumors going around, you're not the only one who suspects something, Lauren said. The nurses she works with feel they're too friendly with each other for it to be purely professional. They spent a lot of time in a patient's room with the door closed. If I hear more, I'll let you know. Please do. As a police officer, we always say, where there's smoke, there's fire. It might be just a mutual attraction that went too far. Either way, I'm going to find out, I said, drying off the hot dogs. Nice try, but I don't think that's going to work, Lawrence said. I've been in similar situations, and when our instincts tell us something, they're usually right. At that moment, I started to believe I was witnessing the same behavior from Ashley that I had seen in high school. If that were true, it could only mean one thing. Ashley had found someone new. Dr. Matthew Clark had joined the medical practice 3 years ago to take over our former family doctor's practice. The local hospital had been making things difficult for our former doctor due to his age and essentially forced him into retirement. Ashley, who had worked at the hospital for several years, had obtained her nursing license there before transferring to the nursing home. The hospital, a teaching institution, preferred a younger staff, and when our former doctor refused to adapt, it was time for him to leave. It's unfortunate when medical organizations prioritize appearance over experience. For the next 4 weeks, I would be on the evening shift, working from 5 to 5 for days on and 4 days off. It was the perfect opportunity for them to do whatever they wanted without being caught. Given my work schedule, Ashley's recent behavior had created enough doubt that I took a step I never thought I would. Before putting the hot dogs on the grill, I texted one of my regular crew members, asking him to call me in 5 minutes. I was next to Ashley when he called. Before answering, I told her I needed privacy for a work-related call and moved to the front yard. Truthfully, I did it because I didn't want Ashley to overhear the conversation. Bill, remember the team we assembled when Mark needed help with his ex-wife a few years ago? I asked. Of course, Jason. It worked well and didn't take long, Bill replied. Who needs our help this time? I do. Based on what I found out, I think it's been going on for at least the past 2 months. Ashley, and the man I suspect she's involved with, is Dr. Matthew Clark. Even her colleagues at the nursing home suspect something. I overheard management discussing it with her, which suggested it's serious. The head of HR even warned Ashley to be more discreet at work. Ouch, if they're saying that, it's been going on for a while. I'll start making calls to arrange for us to meet at the firehouse tomorrow when we're on duty, Bill replied. Our friends at the sheriff's department will be happy to have something different to do. Remember, Jason, we need to impose the same rules on you as we did with Mark. When we helped Mark before, our rule was that he had to stay out of it until our team finished the investigation. We thought any changes in his behavior might tip off his spouse. It took less than 3 weeks to get everything done. We compiled a detailed daily report of his ex-wife's activities with her lover. His lawyer said it was so thorough that nothing could slip through. Mark easily won custody of their 2 kids in the divorce. We met Monday night after dinner in the firehouse meeting room. For sheriff's deputies, 3 police officers, and 2 firefighters were there. I briefed them on what happened Friday and what I had discovered since then. Everyone agreed it seemed like something was definitely going on. I gave them Ashley's car description, license plate number, and her regular work hours from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. They asked me to get copies of her medical records from our files at home for the last year. They wanted to check if Dr. Clark was still our family doctor by looking at the medical bill records. If he and Ashley were romantically involved, he should have transferred us to another doctor in their practice. After that, they asked me to step out so they could plan who would do what and when. On Tuesday morning, after I saw my son off to the bus, I noticed my retired neighbor fetching his morning paper. I walked over to say hi, and we started chatting. He asked why the doctor had visited us the previous night. I asked if he was sure it was a doctor. He said the person was wearing a white coat when he arrived, and he saw him take it off and leave it in the car before coming to our door. He mentioned that the doctor was still at our house when he went to bed around midnight. I said I hoped it wasn't anything serious. He suggested I ask my wife about it when she got home. Walking back home, I realized my suspicions were correct. I grabbed my phone, returned to my neighbor, and showed him a picture of Dr. Matthew Clark from the medical group's website. He confirmed that was the doctor he had seen. Ashley called and said she would be late. I took Evan to my mother so I could get to work on time. I informed Bill about what the neighbor had witnessed and gave him copies of our medical records and health insurance reports. They proved Dr. Clark was still our family doctor, with Ashley's last appointment being 3 weeks ago. The following Tuesday, A few friends came over while Ashley was at work and did some work inside the house. I wasn't allowed inside until they finished, so I sat and talked with my next-door neighbor. He mentioned that the doctor's visit the previous week wasn't medical. I agreed, saying my friends were remodeling the house, but I wasn't involved in that part. They set it up this way, so I wouldn't know where things were. If I had known their plans like anyone else, I'd be watching closely to see if they were working, and my behavior might have given it away. I wish I had friends like yours when I got divorced years ago, my neighbor said. It might have saved me thousands in legal fees alone. Nowadays, you've got to protect yourself from everyone, even those you trust. It's sad how this new computer age has helped erode what little family values we had. It was during the first day of my last 4-day shift, ending the 6 weeks of night shifts, when they showed up at the firehouse to deliver the bad news. They even brought one of the top divorce lawyers from our town with them. I immediately knew my situation was more serious than just my wife cheating. Their choice of lawyer meant the team believed we needed to act quickly. Ashley and Matthew Clark had been having an affair for over 6 months, and it was nearing a breaking point. They felt it was time for me to take decisive action. Ashley planned to wait until the end of the school year, just 1 month away, before filing for divorce. On the nights I was working, they were either at my house after Evan went to bed, or Ashley would take our son to her sister's place for babysitting. Ashley would pick up Evan from Matthew's house in the morning and bring him home before I finished work. Then they would go about their day as usual. The reason the lawyer was present was because of what they were plotting behind my back. With Dr. Clark's assistance, Ashley intended to use claims of emotional abuse against me to prove I was an unfit father and a danger to our son's well-being. Ashley, relying on her professional background, thought that the fabricated accusations, supported by a detailed medical record they were compiling, would convince the court to grant her full custody of our son. She aimed to reduce my interactions with Evan to supervised visits only. Her ultimate goal was to provoke such anger in me and my parents that we would choose to permanently cut ties with them. As I sat there listening to their plans, I couldn't help but wonder what I had done to my soon-to-be ex-wife to make her so malicious and vengeful. The extensive report spanned 60 pages and included dates, explicit photographs of the two engaged intimately, several notarized statements affirming their 6-month relationship, and transcripts of their conversations plotting how they could harm me. Our ace in the hole appeared to be a very graphic picture of our 7-year-old son standing at the foot of our master bed, watching the two of them in a compromising position, with both of them completely oblivious to the fact that Evan was there. I decided to have her served after my last night's shift later this week. After that, we'll file a complaint with the state medical board against Dr. Clark on the same day. We'll provide evidence from our billing records showing he was still acting as our family doctor during that time. We'll question whether he falsified medical records to support my soon-to-be ex-wife's claims of emotional abuse, especially since they discussed setting me up. It was also proven with a photograph that he was having an affair with my wife in front of our 7-year-old son. Dr. Matthew Clark, a respected man, violated medical ethics and broke the law by fouls. Defacing medical records. A copy of the divorce petition will be given to our local child services, along with an explanation that I'm taking my son out of town to allow them to investigate my wife and me without my interference. A letter will explain this as a precautionary measure. The state's child services take crimes against children by family members very seriously. All 3 agencies will receive an 8x10 photograph showing my son witnessing the affair. I'm taking 3 weeks vacation starting right after this week's shifts end. It's already approved. One of the fire department heads, a colleague, was present when I called my retired parents and suggested we use Dad's RV for a 3-week vacation starting the day after my last shift. I said I needed their help and would cover the costs. They agreed but asked why it had to be rushed. I promised to explain on the way. My new lawyer was shocked when I proposed signing over my parental rights to my parents until the divorce was finalized. He agreed it was a smart move given the circumstances. If Ashley had already reported to child services, it shows my top priority is my son's well-being until my name is cleared. It demonstrates to everyone, including legal authorities, that I'm protecting my son first. I'll prepare the paperwork, he said, but make sure to have it notarized within 24 hours of serving your wife. I just finished my final evening shift and made it home in time to see my wife off to work as usual. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving. When she drove away, I quickly made a phone call. Evan and I started packing for a surprise trip. I asked the sheriff's department representative to inform the school principal about our situation and why I had to take my 7-year-old son out of school. At that morning, my parents arrived. We loaded our belongings into their RV, and by mid-morning, we were on the road. Out of courtesy, I called Lauren to update her. She mentioned that since her conversation with Ashley at the hospital, everything had been strictly professional, and the rumors were fading. I explained that I now had proof of their affair, which had been going on for at least 6 months. Consequently, I planned to have legal papers served to Ashley at her workplace later that day. Lauren agreed to witness it and keep me informed afterward. I joined my son in my parents' large RV as we left town. I handed my mother a legal envelope containing all the details, asking her to read it. My dad asked, "What's going on?" "I recently found out Ashley was planning to divorce me at the end of the school year," I said. "What Mom is reading outlines what we've discovered and proven. Her lover is our family doctor, and they were plotting against me. If they hadn't been caught, they could have arranged things so I'd never see Evan again after the legal battles. So we're leaving town because things are about to get very messy for a few people," my dad said. "It's best for you and our grandson to be away from it all." Basically, Ashley will be served at work today. The state medical board will receive an official complaint this morning about Dr. Clark's relationship with his patient, my wife. I'm alleging ethics violations and have some compelling evidence. Child Services will also be informed about everything Mom's reading. He could lose his license to practice for at least a year or more if he's found guilty. Your claim could trigger a deep investigation into every doctor in his group, Dad explained. "Oh my God," Mom exclaimed. "They let my grandson see them doing that. I'll take care of that woman myself. That doctor can say goodbye to his career. He'll lose his license for good. The whole partnership he's in will be scrutinized by every government agency," Dad continued. "They made a mess of things. Ashley will be lucky to get supervised visits. Jason, you and Evan will come live with us when you return," Mom insisted. "If Ashley shows up at my door when your father and you aren't home, I'll answer with a loaded rifle. I'll be driving Evan to school and picking him up every day. I cherish my mom. She adored her grandson more than anything and fiercely protected her family. She'd taken down many who threatened her family over the years. Dad drove until we needed gas. About when the tank was half full, I used my credit card to fill up and took over driving. It gave Dad a chance to read through everything himself. He was amazed at the level of detail. I explained about the group we'd formed within City Services, our second time helping with a divorce case to protect one of our own. Around 3 p.m., we stopped at an RV park for the night that Mom had booked. These 3 weeks were meant to spoil her grandson. After parking and hooking up the RV, I took Evan swimming in their pond. Just as we returned, my cell phone rang. It was Lauren. "Hi, Lauren." I greeted her. "Hope your day went well, Jason," Lauren replied. "Thanks to you. This afternoon we got word that Dr. Matthew Clark has been temporarily suspended from practicing until the state medical board finishes their investigation. They acted quickly. I have to give them credit," I admitted. "I thought they'd at least call him in for an interview first. They only suspend that fast if there's a serious complaint with some evidence already provided," Lauren clarified. "It shows they're taking this very seriously. We probably won't know the outcome for about 2 months. Well, I did send them all the information I included in my divorce petition," I explained. "At 4 p.m., your soon-to-be ex was served right at shift change. I had security informed to expect him and to notify me before allowing him in. When he arrived, I escorted him to Ashley's section. The young man asked her, 'Are you Ashley Green?' When she said yes, he said, 'Congrats, you've been served.'" Lauren recounted. When she opened the legal envelope, the first thing we all saw was the image of Matthew and her in bed with Evan watching. "Oh no," she screamed before fainting. "My lawyer let her see that first. That's priceless." I chuckled. She got what was coming to her. Did the state get a copy of that picture? Lauren inquired. "Most likely, knowing my lawyer," I replied. Then the state had no choice. Dr. Matthew Clark was having an affair with a patient and allowed the patient's minor child to witness it, Lauren analyzed. I didn't think you could pull it off. Now we're all betting on how long he'll lose his license. My dad thinks he's lost it for good in our state, I said. Ashley and Matthew were fabricating a false medical history, claiming I was emotionally abusive to her and our son, so she could get sole custody. If they can prove that, criminal charges might come into play. It's a mess, but her problems are piling up since everyone now knows she let her son see what she was doing with Matthew. The rumors are flying around here. Some of the staff refuse to work with her. I'm redoing the schedule as we speak. They say they can't trust her anymore. When she regained her composure, I informed her that the state had notified us about Dr. Clark's suspension by the medical board pending their investigation. She wasn't happy when she left at 4:30 p.m. Wait until she realizes Evan and I are out of town, I said. We left this morning with my parents on advice from my lawyer. Given the accusations from both Matthew and Ashley, my lawyer thought it best for me not to be alone with my son right now. That's a smart move. Because of her profession, she has a lot of friends everywhere to make her claims credible. Those stories may already be circulating, Lauren remarked. In the end, it's the thoroughness of our reports that has legally saved our organization more than once. We promised to stay in touch and said goodbye. Mom and Dad looked at me in amazement. It was like they were just realizing for the first time what Ashley and Dr. Clark were attempting. Mom, can you find in your notebook the address of the nearest notary for us tomorrow morning? I asked. Why? She asked. The lawyer has prepared legal documents granting you both my parental rights until either the divorce is settled or my name is cleared. We need to have them signed and notarized by 4 p.m. tomorrow, I explained. I won't let them take my son away, no matter what. My mother, tears in her eyes, said, Are you sure about this? It seems extreme. Yes, Mom, I am. Even the lawyer thinks it's best. We don't know what's in those false medical reports, so for Evan's safety, this is necessary until it's proven I'm not a danger to him, I reassured her. My mother started to cry. Ashley returned home to find her husband's car in the driveway. She turned off her car and braced herself for the confrontation she expected. Walking up, she rang the doorbell, assuming he would answer. When he didn't, she rang it again. Finally, she used her house key to unlock the door. When she walked into the house, Ashley noticed it was empty because her son didn't come to greet her. She took the legal envelope out of her large bag and read it thoroughly. It was clear that whoever Jason had hired had uncovered everything. The plan, as outlined by transcripts of Matthew's and her own words, had been exposed. Matthew acted first and aggressively. Their problem was that none of the doctor's medical records had been made public yet because they hadn't reached that stage of their plan, and now they never would. Matthew couldn't access his files until the investigation concluded. He still hadn't been informed of the specifics of the complaint against him. He was only told that precautionary measures were being taken due to the seriousness of the allegations. Jason had proven the affair and their stupidity. No one with any morals or principles would accept the fact that a 7-year-old had to witness them. Until this moment, she hadn't known that it had occurred. Evan likely woke briefly and then returned to bed. Obtaining sole custody was now impossible, but joint custody with primary care remained a possibility. The crucial step was reaching Jason and speaking with him. Jason was always willing to hear her perspective. She dialed him, but his phone redirected to voicemail. She sent a text but received no reply. Trying his parents' home phone, she found they weren't answering. Calls to their cell phones also went unanswered, confirming they had blocked her. She then called her sister, who picked up the phone. Hi, Ashley. Jason was clever. He sent our entire family a copy of his divorce petition, Lindsay said. Mom and Dad are livid. They've read it all and are completely disgusted by your behavior with your lover. In our parents' eyes, you've gone too far trying to ruin Jason's reputation, her sister continued. He called them this morning right after you left for work to let them know he's taking their grandson out of town with his parents. When they asked why, he said, Your daughter and her lover have left me no choice. You'll receive a document explaining everything. Dad, Jason told them, I'm in a legal bind because of Ashley, and I have to sign over my parental rights for Evan until I clear my name. Mom and Dad were hysterical when they read it. Why would you try to destroy Jason's life like this? God damn it, Ashley muttered. Does this mean I'll have to fight my in-laws for custody? Looks that way, Lindsay confirmed. The divorce court can't decide on what Jason doesn't have. It seems he's outsmarted you. I always thought he was the kindest, most generous man I knew, until he was pushed too far. Then he goes all out. You know how Mom feels about her reputation. This is going to be a long, tough battle. I was expecting a fight, but not like this, Ashley admitted. I thought I had a winning strategy. We all got what you received, a certified copy of the divorce petition along with a note saying the same was sent to the state medical board, Lindsay clarified. You and Matthew were trying to ruin him so you could cut Evan out of his life. If you were in his shoes, what would you do? Crap, Ashley exclaimed. He's going after Matthew's career and our future. If the board sides with Jason, Matthew may never practice medicine in this state again. Bingo, sis, you've got it figured out, Lindsay said. He's turning the tables, using your own schemes against you to prove his point. But let's face it, Matthew may be your best lay, but the family and I agree we're staying out of this. We won't support your attempt to ruin your husband's life. Stay away from us until this mess is resolved. Ashley was shocked to realize her husband had outsmarted her completely. Even her own family wanted nothing to do with the mess she had created. She and Matthew had believed they were cautious, so being served had come as a total surprise. She spent the entire night trying to unravel how they had been caught. Matthew Clark had just left a tense 5-hour meeting with his partners. They had agreed to buy him out immediately to minimize the impact of the investigation on their limited partnership. Until they identified who made the serious allegations, everyone was operating blindly. Matthew made enough from the deal to start his own practice once things calmed down. Ashley's phone buzzed with a text message. She opened it to find a reply from Jason. He expressed he was too angry to talk, and any communication must go through their lawyers. Ashley broke down in tears, realizing she had lost her chance to persuade him to withdraw his complaint against their doctor. My parents and I had just left the notary after finalizing the transfer of my parental rights to them. It cost me an extra $5 for them to scan and send a copy to my lawyer. Unexpectedly, I received a call from the family doctor's office. The state was there, and they had a court order to obtain medical records, but my name wasn't included. The nurse asked for my permission to release the records related to my family, including my wife's and my billing records. Mom had planned our trip meticulously, ensuring there was something fun for Evan to do every day. It brought back memories of our childhood vacations. We parked early again, and with the humidity bearable, Dad and I were outside grilling dinner. Mom called out that Lauren was on my cell. I took the phone from her and answered. Hi, Lauren. I greeted her. I'm surprised to hear from you so soon. Lauren chuckled lightly. Ashley was interviewed by state officials this afternoon for about an hour. We used our on-staff notary to record, witness, and verify her statement, Lauren explained. I find that really interesting, I commented. Is there anything else important I should know? After the meeting, she mentioned she'd have to face a full review by the nursing board for her behavior, Lauren explained. She's likely looking at a 2-month probation. How will this affect her job? I inquired. Since what happened didn't occur here, it won't affect her job much, Lauren replied. I'll just have to keep an eye on her and report anything suspicious for the next 2 months. Ashley will probably submit the best daily reports on our patients in the whole organization, but if she does get probation, we'll assign her to the night shift during that time. I chuckled because Ashley disliked night shifts due to their impact on her social life. I mentioned that my parents and I were trying to make this time special for Evan. After a brief chat, I promised Lauren dinner once I returned. During dinner, my mother asked what I knew about Lauren. I admitted I didn't know much. She's a single mother around my age with a daughter slightly older than Evan. I wasn't even sure if she was married. Lauren and I stayed in touch for the remainder of our trip. The day before we returned, I called my lawyer to arrange access to my home so I could collect my belongings. That's when I discovered Ashley had moved out, taking what she wanted, and was now living with Matthew. We cut our trip short by a couple of days to get things sorted out. Slipping back into Cedar Grove on Friday morning, my parents found it amusing and dropped me off at the house early that morning, taking Evan to our new home first. I mowed the lawn, and a neighbor brought over a cold soda before I finished. He remarked it was a clever move, as news of our marriage breakdown had made the local headlines. I called a locksmith to change all the locks. I spent the day cleaning up the mess Ashley had left at home. I called my mom to see if there was anything she needed from the house. She said no, just ours and Evan's clothes. The rest would be sold with the house. I gathered up any canned goods and frozen food we had left and dropped it off at the local food pantry. Then I returned to clean out the fridge. I brought the stuff home, and Mom insisted on washing all the clothes in case something had been done to them. By the late afternoon, I picked up my phone. Lauren answered right away. "Hey, Jason, you're back," Lauren greeted. "When did you get back?" "This morning. Spent the day cleaning up the house to get it ready for sale," I replied. "I was wondering if you and your daughter wanted to join me and Evan for dinner if she's home." "We'd love to, but she's with my parents for the weekend." "I'm free, though," Lauren said. "Great. I'll leave Evan with my mom and pick you up at 7 o'clock. How about Texas Roadhouse or Applebee's?" I asked. "Texas Roadhouse sounds great," she replied. I dressed up a bit for dinner. Nice shirt, dress pants, and leather shoes. With our reservation, we were seated promptly. We had a good meal, and I learned more about Lauren. She had never married and was raising her 8-year-old daughter on her own. Her father had been a police officer in his time. My first day back at work was scheduled for Sunday. No decisions had been made yet by the state about Ashley and Matthew. The feeling was the longer it took, the worse it would be. I shared what we did as a family with Evan over the 3 weeks. Afterward, we strolled through downtown Cedar Grove to see the sights. Around 11 p.m., I arrived back at my parents' place, where my mom, being my mom, was still up. At work on Sunday afternoon, I was called to the office. There was a visitor waiting to see me. I figured it was who I expected. I was right. It was my soon-to-be ex, Ashley. "Mrs. Clark, what can I do for you?" I greeted, turning on the voice recorder app on my cell phone as I walked into the office. "My name is still Green, Jason," Ashley replied. "Well, if that's true, then I'm still nothing but garbage to you," I responded. "So, what do you want?" "Jason, that's not true," Ashley said, trying to calm things down. "Sorry, but your actions speak louder than words, don't they?" I replied. "The first thing you did was move in with someone else as soon as Evan and I went on vacation. Witnesses say you moved in the next day. So much for feeling guilty or remorseful." "I want to see Evan," Ashley said. "Check with your lawyer. I legally have no say in that anymore." "Looks like you're knocking on the wrong door," I replied. "After all, you publicly accused me of abusing our child." "I know that, but you can help facilitate it," Ashley said. "Sorry, I don't think Evan should be around someone who is nothing but trouble," I said. "Photos show how much you care about our son when you're in another man's arms. Deal with my parents directly. Please leave, Mrs. Clark, and don't come back, or I'll seek a restraining order." With that, I turned away and walked out. I instructed the staff member on duty to escort her out. I turned off the recording app and saved it. Later, he told me her face turned pale, and she broke down as he escorted her to her car. I informed her that based on what I had heard, Jason had no choice but to react this way. If she had felt any responsibility over the past 4 weeks, she would have done something to clear his name. Most of us who assisted in the investigation find your behavior unforgivable. You are nothing but a scheming, greedy woman who planned to take everything that mattered to him. I was assisting first responders on a medical call late Monday afternoon when my mother called. I let the call go to voicemail. We were preparing an elderly woman for transport to the hospital. When I returned to the station, I called her back. "Sorry, Mom. I was on a call and couldn't answer," I explained. "I figured you'd call. I wanted you to know the state was here shortly after I brought Evan home. They spoke to him directly at school today," she said. "They toured the house, inspected his room. I showed them the transfer of parental rights, and we discussed it for a while. I assured them I have never seen my son be offensive to anyone." "Thanks, Mom. That's good to know," I said. "I hope you're not upset, but Ashley's parents are here and staying for dinner," she said. "Should we wait for you?" "That's okay, Mom. Please give them my love and let them know I'll be there as soon as I can," I replied. "Tell them they can have Evan whenever they want, as long as Ashley isn't around. It has to be that way until everything is settled in court." I ended up working late because one of the guys on the evening shift couldn't make it until 9 o'clock, so I stayed to cover. I told him he could make up the hours later. I texted my mom not to wait and explained why. I was just heading home in my Chevy Tahoe when Ashley's dad called me. "Hi, Dad. How was dinner?" I asked. It was great. Both my wife and I enjoyed it, Dad said. Jason, my wife, and I want to thank you. Gracie told us what you said. We're so sorry for what our daughter has done. We promise to honor your terms. Have you spoken to her at all? We haven't since we received the copy of the divorce petition. She came by the station on Sunday, demanding to see Evan. I told her it's out of my hands. She'll have to deal with my mom about that. Oh, and I just remembered I recorded our conversation. How about I text it to you? I said. Please do. I'd like to hear it, Dad replied. So I sent it to him. I guess it went over well because he forwarded it to my parents, all his kids, including Ashley, then sent a text back saying the truth was well explained. It's a good thing I live in a small town because I found out the next day that my wife and I were scheduled to see Judge Henry Stone on Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. He's the toughest, most principled judge in the area. In his courtroom, you could say what you wanted, but if you crossed the line, he'd set you straight. It was rumored, but not proven, that some guys never recovered after facing him. He was a legend here. People often said he made Judge Judy look like a pushover. My lawyer warned me that when Judge Stone handles our case, it's going to be more serious than a courtroom drama. You had to be careful and ready to answer his questions promptly or face consequences. The judge doesn't tolerate slander or hints. He wants facts. With this understanding, we prepared our defense. We were all present as the judge took his seat. Ashley's lawyers sought visitation rights to see Evan, which required overturning my parental rights surrender. My lawyer argued that I had voluntarily given up parental rights due to accusations by my wife and her partner. Since the State Medical Board and Child Services were still investigating these claims, the issue of whether I was emotionally abusive to my son remained unresolved. Until this is clarified by the legal system, any time Jason spends alone with his son could be seen as a potential danger. Jason set aside his pride and prioritized his son's well-being. He hasn't been alone with him since the accusations surfaced because of the predicament caused by his wife. We presented a recorded conversation as evidence, witnessed by others, where Jason explained that Ashley would need to resolve matters with those who held parental rights, his parents. The judge requested to hear the conversation, so my lawyer played it through the courtroom sound system. Ashley wasn't pleased to hear it again. Then my lawyer submitted a notarized statement from a witness who provided additional context after I had left. The judge asked to see the transfer of parental rights, and my lawyer handed him a copy. A slight smile crossed his face as he read it. Turning to Ashley's lawyer, the judge asked, "Is it true that because his soon-to-be ex-wife accused him of emotional abuse, he took the actions he believed necessary?" My wife's attorney explained, "Yes, but she was under significant emotional stress during that period. Now that she's out of the relationship, she's regained her stability." "Is this being investigated as described?" I asked. "Yes, it is, and there hasn't been any ruling or resolution yet," her lawyer replied. "I'll read what the surrender of parental rights states," the judge said. "I voluntarily relinquish my parental rights until government agencies investigating allegations about my parenting decide, or until the court rules, based on evidence, that I'm not an abuser of any kind. Currently, 3 agencies are involved, correct?" "There are 3. The State Medical Board, Child Services, and the State Nursing Board," my lawyer clarified. "Interesting. This is quite a complicated situation. How long have these investigations been ongoing?" Judge Stone inquired. "About a month," my lawyer answered. "From the duration, it seems this isn't just a typical dispute of conflicting claims, correct?" the judge questioned. "On page 22, the second and third paragraphs of Jason Clark's divorce petition will clarify why these 3 boards are still investigating," my lawyer explained. We all observed as the judge retrieved and read the document. His expression turned serious as he set the paperwork down and glanced at my wife's lawyer. "Let me be clear. The divorce cannot proceed until all 3 investigations are concluded. I won't interfere with investigations that might lead to criminal charges. Based on what I've read, it appears that one party is here due to potential criminal actions by others. I must consider this possibility. It's possible that the accusations against one party by the other are unfounded," Judge Stone stated. "The surrender of Mr. Jason Clark's parental rights stands. I commend the wisdom he's shown in court by his actions. It takes a special kind of parent to prioritize the child's needs. Mr. Clark did this for both the child's protection and his own. Given the questionable conduct of both biological parents toward their child and the actions of one, he felt it was best to remove himself from the situation. Therefore, until we review the state reports, no final decisions can be made. Mrs. Green's request for visitation must be pursued against the child's other legal guardian, who is not him. Court is adjourned, the judge concluded. Ashley's expression spoke volumes. She clearly didn't accept that my actions had been validated legally. She was furious about losing. As we exited the courtroom, she confronted me. "Jason, how did you figure it out?" Ashley demanded. "It was a series of small details that didn't add up, from Evan's accident to the cookout at Lauren's," I explained. "Remember that Sunday phone call?" "Yes, why?" Ashley asked, clearly intrigued. "Just before that call, I noticed your behavior mirrored how you were in high school when you started liking someone else." I recounted that call I received was in response to a text I sent minutes earlier. By the time it ended, you were already under investigation. Her face turned pale. She hadn't realized she had inadvertently exposed herself. Until then, she had believed someone, had betrayed her secret. "Pay attention to the little things. They reveal the whole story," I said with a grin. "Given your meticulous patient reporting, you should have known that." I didn't need to rub it in, but I couldn't resist. Seeing her even angrier only widened my smile. After court, I slipped into the men's room and ran into Judge Stone. I thanked him for his ruling. "It was my pleasure," Judge Stone replied. "Once I reviewed the facts, it became crystal clear." "Did your lawyer suggest you take that step?" "No, it was my decision," I replied. Knowing Ashley as well as I do, I realized she would stop at nothing to worsen my situation. I felt cornered, knowing she had connections that could sway the outcome. This was the only way I could protect myself. If you hadn't acted preemptively, she might have gained visitation and even custody due to the severity of her accusations, the judge acknowledged. "Your preemptive move put a stop to all that. I hope your name is cleared soon." "So did I said. Saturday night at the fairgrounds, there was a back to the ADS dance in one of the exhibition buildings. I got a couple of tickets and called Lauren to see if she wanted to join. She said yes, but she had to have dinner with her parents first. She invited me and Evan to join them, and I agreed. It was interesting. It had been a while since I faced an overprotective father. Evan and Lauren's daughter, Hannah, were getting along well. Lauren's father seemed a bit harsh. I think Lauren noticed because I overheard her telling her father to ease off. "I know Jason is a good, honest man," she said. "How do you know what kind of man he is?" he retorted. "His ex-wife has accused him of all sorts of things, and everyone's whispering about it behind his back." "Dad," Lauren replied. "He works out of Station 3. He paused, then smiled and said, "Well, why didn't you tell me that? It takes a special kind of man to be a police officer. I now know those stories about you are all nonsense. You're always welcome here." They offered to keep Evan overnight, but I explained he was due at his grandparents' for the weekend, which led to me having to explain the whole situation. The dance was a blast. There's nothing quite like dancing to oldies like Twist and Shout, all the Beach Boys songs, and early rock and roll. Some of the doo-wop songs were her favorites because her mother used to play them when she was growing up. I walked Lauren to her door. As we said goodnight, she leaned in and kissed me. "Jason, I know it's early, but I'm interested when you're ready," she said before saying goodnight. I got back to my parents' home just after 2 a.m. Once again, Mom was waiting up. We talked about the night and how much I enjoyed it before I headed off to bed. The lawyers finalized the division of assets, and we put the house up for sale. Things were slowly moving forward. 3 months after the separation, things started to fall into place. The state medical board found Dr. Matthew Clark guilty of multiple violations of their ethics code, primarily altering medical records for personal gain. His attempt to ruin a man's life to steal his wife was taken very seriously. His medical license in the state was permanently revoked. Lauren called me when she heard the news, waking me from my sleep. I had just started back on night shifts and had only gotten about 3 hours of sleep. I was wide awake and too excited to go back to sleep. When I told my mom and dad the news, my mom was overjoyed. As I came out dressed up, my mom asked, "What's up?" I told her I was going to ask the woman who stood by me these last few months if she'd like to go to lunch. Mom smiled and said, "Don't you think it's time we met Lauren?" I arrived at Cedar Grove Nursing Home around noon, dressed semi-formally. The first person I saw was the receptionist who had lied to me months ago. Her face turned pale as I approached her counter inside the main entrance. "Could you please contact Lauren Smith and let her know there's a gentleman here asking if she's available for lunch?" I asked. I watched as she called Lauren's extension. A few minutes later, Lauren arrived wearing a big smile. After greeting her, I pulled her into my arms and kissed her. Hand in hand, we left and went to the Olive Garden for lunch. "You know, we're now the talk of the town," Lauren said. "Ashley already found out from the receptionist, who's the queen of gossip. That's her problem. Now that I've been cleared, I'm moving forward," I replied. "Besides, my new girlfriend might be getting tired of waiting for me to get moving." I must have said something right, because Lauren's eyes welled up with tears. What was meant to be an hour lunch turned into 3. Later, I found out that after I dropped Lauren off, the receptionist told Ashley how happy and in love we looked. Ashley was about to discover trouble in her own paradise. The local NBC station reported the news during their early evening broadcast. It exposed how Dr. Matthew Clark and Ashley Green had conspired against me by falsifying medical records. Later that same week, the nursing board put Ashley on probation for a year. Lauren followed policy and transferred Ashley to the graveyard shift. Ashley's relationship with Matthew became strained, especially when she found out she was pregnant. Matthew began looking for other job opportunities, but found none. He eventually took a position as an orderly at the Lakeview Veterans Home, working the graveyard shift. It was the final night shift of a 4-day stretch when I walked into the station and saw a congratulatory banner hanging up. They had brought someone in to cover my shift. Lauren, her daughter, and her parents were there, along with our captain. My parents and son were also present. I had just been promoted. The process had been delayed because of everything I had been through. This promotion meant no more swing shifts for me. I was now in a junior management position, working 5 days a week for 9 hours each day, with weekends off. During the party, I overheard Bill Smith telling the captain that if things went well, he might soon be my father-in-law. It took about 3 more weeks before we returned to see Judge Stone. The terms of the settlement were approved, and my divorce was granted on grounds of adultery. Matthew Clark disappeared one night, leaving Ashley alone and pregnant. On Thanksgiving weekend, about an hour before sunset, I took Lauren for a walk through a local state park. I had a little something planned that involved me getting down on one knee. She said yes, of course. Our families had organized a Thanksgiving party on Saturday afternoon at Lauren's house. I had just finished grilling the hot dogs I liked. While serving them, Lauren's mother, Janet, spotted the engagement ring and hugged her daughter. "When were you going to tell me?" Janet asked. "After we finished eating," Lauren replied with a big grin. Bill noticed his wife's reaction and loudly asked her, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, Bill. Lauren and Jason got engaged. They're getting married," Janet announced. "We got married a week before Christmas. Ashley is now allowed to see Evan when she is with her parents. What no one knows is that legally my parents and I have regained my parental rights. Ashley has to live with the fact that one of her bosses is now her ex-husband's wife. She's not a happy person.